For years, my official title in the family has been the responsible one. It sounds like a compliment, but it's really a life sentence. It means I'm the one who manages my aging parents' bills, schedules their doctor's appointments, and fixes their leaky faucets, all while raising my own 2 kids. I am the family's invisible infrastructure, the unseen labor that makes their comfortable lives possible. In return, I am granted their constant, withering judgment. The breaking point, the moment the infrastructure finally decided to collapse, happened last Sunday. My 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, who is painfully shy, had worked up the courage to read my mother a short story she had written. It was a story about a girl who could talk to animals. She read it, her voice trembling but proud. When she finished, my mother just patted her on the head and said, "That's nice, dear. But you know, your cousin is already learning to code. That's the future." I watched my daughter's face, so full of hope, just crumple. My mother didn't just invalidate her creativity, she invalidated her courage. And the invisible caregiver in me was suddenly replaced by a very visible, very angry mother. They sit in this house, the house my grandfather built, and pass judgment from on high, forgetting the one single crucial detail in his will. He didn't leave the house to them. He left it to me, with the sole provision that they could live here as long as they treated their family with kindness and respect. They seem to have forgotten that clause. I haven't. Of course. The crushed look on my daughter Chloe's face last Sunday wasn't a new expression. It was a family heirloom, passed down from me to her. My parents specialize in a particular brand of casual cruelty, a constant low-grade chipping, away at any joy that doesn't fit their narrow worldview. I have endured it for myself for decades, but seeing them pass it down to my children was the moment I decided to break the chain of inheritance. My role as the responsible one was formally assigned 5 years ago, after my dad's heart scare. My older brother Tom flew in for a day, wrung his hands with a look of deep, performative concern, explained that his career and his family in Seattle were at a critical stage, and then flew home. The responsibility, without discussion, fell to me. It always falls to me. I became their unpaid chauffeur, their on-call IT support, their medical advocate, and their landscaper. This was all on top of my own job and raising my own kids. My efforts were never acknowledged. They were absorbed into the background of their lives, as essential and as invisible as the oxygen they breathed. Their cruelty is always disguised as a gift. For my son Leo's last birthday, he was obsessed with building a terrarium. He had spent weeks researching it. I watched my father hand him a gift-wrapped box. Inside was a children's book about Wall Street finance. "It's never too early to learn about something important," my father had said, ruffling Leo's hair, completely oblivious to the crushed look on my son's face. They weren't giving him a gift. They were issuing a correction, a quiet little memo that his passions were wrong. They do all this from the comfort of the house my grandfather left behind. He was a wise man. He saw my parents' nature with a clarity they never had themselves. He adored me. And when he died, his will was a masterpiece of foresight. He left the house and all its assets in a trust, with me as the sole trustee and eventual owner. He gave my parents a life estate, the right to live here for the rest of their lives, but he attached one single beautiful condition, a morality clause. They could stay, he wrote, so long as this home remains a place of kindness, and they treat all members of their family, especially their grandchildren, with the love and respect they are due. For 15 years, they have violated that clause, in spirit. But last Sunday, when they crushed my daughter's spirit, they violated it in letter. And they have no idea the eviction notice has already been signed in my heart. The day after my mother crushed my daughter's spirit, I didn't call her to fight. I didn't send an angry text. I found the old worn business card of Mr. Hemlock, my grandfather's estate lawyer, and I made an appointment. As I sat in his quiet, wood-paneled office, I laid out the last 15 years of my life, the unpaid, unthanked labor, the constant, casual dismissals of my own life, and finally, the systematic criticism of my children. He listened patiently, then swiveled in his large, leather chair to a tall filing cabinet. He pulled out a thick, dusty folder with my grandfather's name on it. He opened it, his fingers finding the page he was looking for almost immediately. "Your grandfather was a very wise, very specific man," Mr. Hemlock said, peering at me over his glasses. He read the clause aloud, the old, formal language filling the room with a power I had only ever felt in my heart. "A life estate is granted, conditional upon the home being maintained as a place of kindness and familial respect. Should the residents fail to treat their family, including their grandchildren, with the love and respect they are due, the trustee has the full authority to—" He trailed off, looking at me. "The trustee, Laura, is you." He leaned back. "He saw this coming. He knew their nature, and he gave you the tools to protect yourself and your own. The trust gives you complete authority to manage the estate's assets for their well-being and to determine if they are meeting the terms of their residency." And in that moment, the plan became crystal clear. This wasn't going to be a loud, messy eviction. That was their style of drama, not mine. This was going to be a quiet, strategic, corporate restructuring of our family. They had treated my love and labor like a free utility for years. Fine. I was simply going to start charging for it. I would hire professional services, all paid, for by the trust I controlled, to replace every single thing I did for them. They would get their groceries delivered, their bills paid by an accountant, their medical care managed by a professional nurse. They would get everything they needed. Except for one thing, me. I was withdrawing my presence, my Sunday dinners, my emotional support, and most importantly, my children. I wasn't taking their house away. I was just taking away their daughter. They were about to learn what the true cost of my invisible labor was. I called the meeting for a Tuesday afternoon in a small, sterile conference room I rented by the hour. I chose it specifically because it had no memories and no emotional leverage. It was a place of business. I arrived first, laying out a single, thin folder on the polished table. My parents walked in, looking confused and annoyed. "What is this, Laura?" my mother asked, her voice tight. "Why couldn't we just do this at the house?" "Because," I said, my voice calm and even, "this isn't a family chat. This is a review of the estate's management." I let that sink in. I opened the folder. "I have come to the conclusion that my role as your primary caregiver is no longer tenable. As trustee, my first responsibility is to ensure your well-being with the assets provided in my grandfather's trust. So I have arranged for, and the trust will be paying for, a suite of professional services, effective immediately." I slid 2 pieces of paper across the table. "This is the contact information for Senior Solutions, a home care agency. A registered nurse named Patricia will be coming 3 times a week to manage your appointments and medications. The second sheet is the number for a reputable local accountant who will now be managing your bills." They stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. My father was the first to speak, his face turning a blotchy red. "A nurse? An accountant? Are you insane?" he sputtered. "Do you know what this will cost? We don't need all that. You've been handling things just fine. This is a gross mismanagement of the trust's funds." His first thought wasn't of their care, but of the cost. He was furious that I was spending his inheritance on his own well-being. My mother's attack was more personal. Her eyes filled with tears. "So this is your revenge," she whispered, her voice trembling with theatrical hurt. "This is because I was honest about Chloe's little story? You're going to replace me with a stranger? You're going to abandon your own mother and father?" And there it was, the final, irrefutable proof. I offered them a professional, comprehensive solution to all their practical needs. A solution that would grant me the peace and autonomy to raise my own children in a healthy environment. But they didn't want a solution. They didn't want care. They wanted control. They wanted the unpaid, unconditional, unending servitude of their daughter. They weren't angry about losing a caregiver. They were terrified of losing their ghost. My strategic withdrawal wasn't just a plan anymore. It was a moral necessity. My parents responded to my new plan with the only tool they had left: strategic incompetence. They refused to answer the door when the nurse, Patricia, arrived for her first scheduled visit. They were deliberately obtuse with the accountant on the phone, claiming not to have the right paperwork. They believed they could make my solution so difficult to implement that I would be forced to surrender and return to my old role. They were wrong. The breaking point, the real one, came on a Friday. My phone rang, and it was my mother, her voice a theatrical shriek of panic. "Laura, you need to come now. Your father's fallen. He's on the floor, he can't get up, and that nurse of yours is nowhere to be found." My blood ran cold. For a split second, the old conditioned sense of duty flared up. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding, before a cold, suspicious thought stopped. Me. I called Patricia, the nurse, directly. "I'm fine, Laura," she said, her voice calm. "I'm at my next patient's house. Your parents canceled today's appointment this morning. Said they were feeling fine." It was a lie. A calculated, cruel lie, designed to bypass my boundaries and drag me back into their drama with a manufactured crisis. I drove to the house, my anger a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I walked in to find my father not on the floor, but in his armchair watching television. My mother stood there, her arms crossed, a defiant look on her face. "He's feeling much better now that he knows you're on your way," she said, without a hint of shame. "I hope you see now how ridiculous this is. We don't need a stranger. We need our daughter." She then delivered the final, unforgivable blow. "This is your choice, Laura. You can have a family, where your children get to have their grandparents. Or you can have this arrangement. If you want us in their lives, you will fire these people and do your duty." She was using my own children as a bargaining chip. She was threatening to withhold her toxic presence from their lives as if it were some grand prize, conditional on my total submission. I looked at these two selfish, manipulative people and I felt nothing but a profound, cleansing sense of finality. They had just given me the legal and moral justification to do what my grandfather had always known might be necessary. I took out my phone. They thought I was going to call and fire the nurse. They were wrong. I dialed my lawyer. "Mr. Hemlock," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "It's Laura. They've breached the morality clause. It's time to execute the final provision of the trust." My mother's face went white. They had finally overplayed their hand. I ended the call with my lawyer and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The silence in the room was absolute, thick with the weight of my parents' dawning horror. They stared at me, no longer seeing their invisible daughter, but the trustee of their fate. "For my entire life," I said, my voice quiet and devoid of any anger, "I have fulfilled my duties, the duty of a daughter and the duty of a caregiver. I have endured the criticism, the thankless labor, and the constant invalidation of myself and my children." I looked around the room, at the furniture my grandfather had chosen, at the walls that were supposed to be a place of kindness. My grandfather gave you a gift, this beautiful house, a place to live out your days in peace. He had only one condition, that you treat your family with love and respect. When you used my children as pawns in your cruel games, when you faked a medical emergency, to manipulate me, you broke that contract. You violated the terms of the trust. My mother started to cry, a pathetic mewling sound. "Laura, you wouldn't throw us out." "No," I said. "I would not. Grandfather was a better person than that, and as the executor of his wishes, I will not be cruel. I will simply be strategic." I walked toward the door. As we speak, my lawyer is executing the final provision of the trust. He is leasing a lovely 2-bedroom apartment for you at the Oakwood Senior Living Community. The trust will cover all expenses. The nurse Patricia will manage your care there. Your meals will be provided. You will be safe and comfortable. I paused at the door, turning to face them one last time. You have 30 days to remove your personal belongings. After that, the locks will be changed, and this house will finally become the place my grandfather always intended it to be, a safe, loving home for my children. I will continue to manage the trust and your finances, I finished. You will be provided for efficiently and impersonally. You will have everything you need. You just won't have me. You won't have my children. Your life of being cared for by family is over. My life as your caregiver is over. The withdrawal is complete. I walked out, closing the door softly behind me, leaving them to the consequences they had earned, a safe, sterile, and perfectly lonely future they had built for themselves. It has been a year since the withdrawal, a year of quiet. My children and I moved into my grandfather's house, and for the first time, it feels like it's breathing again. We filled the silent, tense rooms with laughter and Lego bricks and the smell of baking cookies. Last weekend, my husband built a treehouse in the backyard for Leo and Chloe. As I watched them climb the rope ladder, their faces alight with pure joy, I knew I had finally honored my grandfather's true legacy. I had made his house a place of kindness again. I still act as the trustee. Once a month, I review the reports from the Oakwood Senior Living community. I approve the payments for their meal plans and the invoices from their doctors. I know, from a detached administrative distance, that my parents are safe, clean, and medically supervised. They have the professional care they need, paid for by the trust. They are living with the direct consequences of their own actions. A life of efficient, sterile, impersonal support. They wanted a caregiver without the emotional complication of a daughter, and now they have one. I realized my final act as their caregiver wasn't an act of revenge. It was my first true act as a mother. I had to stop pouring myself into the cracked foundation of their lives so I could build a better, stronger one for my own children. I had to make myself visible so I could truly see them. To all the invisible caregivers out there, the ones running on empty to keep everyone else's world turning, your peace is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Your presence in your own life matters, more than your function in someone else's. If you have a story about reclaiming your own space, please share it in the comments below. Let's make the invisible visible, together. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe for more stories about strategic withdrawals.